Okay, Chairman, we're streaming on YouTube now. We are live on YouTube now.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Western Area Planning Committee. My name is Councillor David Beeman and I'm the chairman of this committee. Start with members and officers, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to speak. Please keep your microphone on mute when you're not speaking. And please can I also ask that any questions get brief and to the point. We'll be timing speeches this evening and an alarm will sound when you've been speaking for 4 minutes. Right, okay. Apologies for absence and substitutes. Kimberly, any apologies received? Thank you.
Yes, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor George Hess, Councillor Peter Isherwood, Councillor Brian Edmonds and Councillor Roger Brillishin. And sorry, and substitutes, we have Councillor Mulliner.
Very much. Minutes of the last meeting, the minutes of the last meeting held on the 15th of December, published on the council's website. Everybody in agreement with those, please? Agreed. Thank you. Question, the declarations of interest.
None received, Chairman.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Chairman. I'm not entirely sure, but I think I may know the directors of the applicant company on 8.2 on the agenda. I haven't searched the records on Companies House, but I believe I may know them if what I think is correct. So I'd just like to register that as a non-pecuniary.
Fair point. Thank you very much for that. Questions from members of the public?
None received, Chairman.
Questions from members?
None received, Chairman.
Any legislation, Chris?
No, Chairman, thank you.
We'll move on to the items on the agenda tonight, and that is the first one. They're all subject to public speaking, and the first one is WA 2021-0423, the land at 31 Hill Road, Hazelmere, GU 272NH, the erection of a dwelling and associated works, a revision of WA 2020-0492. Lara is the officer. Can you present your case, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to share my screen. This application proposes the erection of a 3-bedroom dwelling within the existing residential curtilage of 31 Hill Road, Hazelmere. This site is shown via the red line on the location plan, which is positioned to the south side of Hill Road. Here is an aerial view of the site, with the site identified with the red arrow in the centre of your screen. Here are some recent photographs taken of the site, taken from Hill Road, with the host dwelling shown on the right-hand side of the photograph. Here are some further photos of the site. The left-hand side photo is taken from further back on Hill Road, with 29 Hill Road shown in the background of this photo. This slide shows the proposed block plan of the dwelling, demonstrating the reduced plot size in comparison to previous applications on this site. Officers will draw members' attention to the inspector's assessment in the previously dismissed appeal on this site, which reads, the area around the site has a distinctive spatial character distinguished by large detached houses of 2 or 3 stories, standing in plots with areas many times greater than their footprints. In this distinctive spatial context, its site coverage in terms of its footprint and the volume of the development would appear significantly smaller and at odds with the character of the area, which has a grander scale. At the same time, the proportion of the plot which would be occupied by the building would be substantially greater than the proportion occupied by many of the surrounding houses. This slide demonstrates the proposed ground floor and first floor plans of the proposed dwelling. It would provide 3 bedrooms at first floor level. This slide demonstrates the proposed elevations of the scheme. The proposed dwelling is a 2-storey with hipped roof and small pitched roof gables set within the eaves. External materials would consist of plain clay tiles for the roof and tile and facing brickwork. Here is a proposed seat screen as viewed from Hill Road, with the proposed dwelling being shown in the centre. The main matters for consideration are the planning history and the differences with the previous proposals, design and visual amenity, the impact on residential amenity, heritage assets and trees. Officers are recommending refusal of the application on the following grounds. The proposal, by virtue of its size and scale in relation to the size of the plot and its relationship with the surrounding area, would result in a loss of open character and a cramped appearance, which would be harmful to the street scene and the visual amenity of the area, contrary to retained policies D1 and D4 of the Local Plan 2002, policy D1 of the TD1 of the Local Plan 2018 and the MPPF. Thank you, Chair.
Do members want that repeated for this? Yes. Refusal. Lara, could you just repeat those refusal reasons, please?
Yeah, of course. The proposal, by virtue of its size and scale in relation to the size of the plot and its relationship with the surrounding area, would result in a loss of open character and a cramped appearance, which would be harmful to the street scene and the visual amenity of the area, contrary to retained policies D1 and D4, policy D1 of the Local Plan 2018 and the MPPF. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, we do have, well, the applicant did wish to speak, but in fact are away, aren't they, at the moment? Well, they have circulated a very comprehensive note, I think, to all members of the committee. We do have a speaker, Councillor Knowles, who's a ward councillor, has asked to speak on this application. Councillor Knowles, are you there?
I am here, Chairman, yes.
Yeah, right. 4 minutes, Councillor Knowles, another 4 minutes at the end if you...
Well, thank you very much. I won't take 4 minutes. When this matter was referred by officers to the ward members here, we'll be happy for it to be turned down on delegated powers. I was quite happy to do so. And I agree with everything that the officer has said for the reasons given for refusal. Over the last 15 years that I've been on the council and many of that times on the planning committees, met repeated applications to develop this site or overdevelop this site, and mostly they've been refused by committee and appeal for a number of reasons as given by officers. So to not waste the committee's time, I'd just say, Chairman, I agree with the officers. The size and the scale is out of keeping and harmful to the street scene, and I would ask that it be refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Knowles. Right.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Like Councillor Knowles, of course, I used to chair Southern and Western, and so it's a bit of deja vu once or twice on the agenda tonight. You only have to look at the pattern of development on the general plan to see how this stands out as being what should we say, an unacceptable size of development for this particular area. We've had lots of compromise over the years to try and get something that's suitable, but really and truly, you just cannot do what they are trying to achieve on this plot without destroying the natural pattern of development, which is loose. The officers said it all, really. So I'm afraid I don't think this new application overcomes any of the objections we've had before. It would harm the character of this particular area, and I think is just cramped, as the officer says, and unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm going to put the opposing view, which is that this is a derelict site. It's been a patch of scrub, has been for years. It's a completely natural infill site between the existing houses. It is adjacent a listed building. It's listed because a Victorian volcanologist lived there for about 11 years, rather than because of the building's intrinsic merit, but it is listed. Previous applications has been refused. The inspector said it failed to respect the listed building, and I think officers clearly felt themselves constrained in this application as a result of that. But in my view, the application opens up the view of the listed building more, which I think is a good thing. I think the external character and appearance is in keeping with the Hill Road design. It's, I would say, in that as a result, compliant with the Hazelmere design statement. And when it came up at the town council, at the planning committee there, that we were positively supportive of it at our meeting. Hazelmere desperately needs houses to fulfill the quota that we have to fill. And for all those reasons, I think we should approve this tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mullin.
I find myself in part agreeing with Councillor Dear, but in part not. I think the important thing to say is that there is no housing gain in this because there exists permission for an attached building on the same site, and this would replace it. So it's a 1-for-1. So there's no net gain, that should not be a factor. Secondly, what I agree with him is the effect on the heritage asset, because having visited the site again and spoken to the owner of 29 Hill Road, who at one stage in this process, which goes back, as Councillor Knowles said, for some 15 years, was an opponent of any development, for all the reasons that the various inspectors, I think a total of 4, have used in refusing appeals on this site, because of the effect on the listed building. But what actually is proposed is that the applicant will sell or give a chunk of land on the left-hand side as we saw it, which would allow the owner of 29 Hill Road to open up the view of his building, which is a Hutchinson building. I don't think it's listed because of the occupant, but it's a similar style to 2 other buildings in the area. However, the inspectors always had 2 reasons. One was, of course, the effect on the listed building, and the other was the cramping effect on that particular locality. And that's the part which led to every other application for a detached building in that plot being both refused by this committee or its predecessor and being refused on appeal every time by the inspector. And I do have some difficulty, therefore, in finding a good reason to differ from the officer's recommendation. But Councillor Dear raised another point which troubles me a lot, but not perhaps for the reason he thinks. Derelict site. Well, it's not a very pretty site. But I am always made very nervous by the argument that local planning authorities should allow themselves to be, in effect, browbeaten into granting permission, because if they don't, the site will not be developed. There is a planning solution for this site. It's the one which this committee's predecessor gave 4 years ago in 2017, 1111, which was a compromise, which was to grant an attachment to the existing large building at 31 Hill Road. So at least the general idea of large buildings and spacious grounds would be preserved while giving the extra housing and, one would hope, seeing the garden landscape properly, so it would be an attractive part of the overall area. So I come down on the side that the officers are correct. They have looked at the planning history, and this is about the 5th attempt to put a detached building on that plot. And although I know that the people in the area would be much more supportive of this than they were in the past, I feel from a planning perspective, it's still not something I can support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you. I will be supporting the officers because you've only got to look at the location plan on page 6 and look at all the houses that have got those very big gardens. Once we allow one, I mean, to me, it might be a separate patch on this, but it could be a lovely garden for the main house. So the fact that it's been left neglected is irrelevant. And all those houses surrounding it with all big gardens, Park Road, the house opposite, the house of Dean, the back of Dean Close, that'll be the back of another one, looks like the Glebe. They could all have, once we do one, then it's going to be a challenge to stop all the others, just subdividing their gardens and putting a nice detached house in it. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Rubini?
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, I agree with several of the other speakers. The fact is the inspector's made his view quite well known. And I believe he's right, that is an area that shows bigger houses in their grounds. And I also agree with Councillor James' point, the fact that if you look around that area, you can see that there are big open spaces. And yes, they will build in those areas. And we already have semi-detached houses. We've already given our view on how to complete this with that earlier permission. So as far as I'm concerned, I would support the officers in this and refuse this application. Why can't they get on and actually build that previous commitment? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Keane? Yeah. Councillor Keane?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I should be supporting the officers on this because I believe that it is a cramping effect on the site. And as previous speakers have said, most of the houses around there are on big plots, very open site. And the very fact that it's a derelict site is due to the fact that the developers or whoever's wanting to build this house have not got the permission they wanted. So they've just left it to sit there, and it does look derelict. And also, I think it sets an awful precedent if we start agreeing to these squashed in developments, because anybody else can do the same, and we would then ruin a very pretty street scene. So as I say, I support the officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other councillors to speak? Right. Councillor Knowles, do you wish to have any more to say in this?
No, thank you, Chairman. I just repeat, I think it's of an unacceptable size, and it does not overcome the reasons previously given for refusal on similar applications. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Right, we'll move to the recommendation, and let's get this quite clear. The recommendation is that permission be refused. Those in favour of supporting the officer's recommendation that should be refused, please raise their hands. Against? And abstain. The result, Kimberly?
Thank you, Chairman. That's 10 votes to accept the officer recommendation, 1 against and no abstentions. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Therefore, the officer recommendation that this application should be refused is upheld. Thank you. Can we move on? The second application is WA 2021-0031, the land at Furnace Place Estate Farm, Killinghurst Lane, Hazelmere. The widening of existing agricultural access, replacement hard standing to farm, track and provision of access gates as amplified by email and tracking plan received on the 9th of February. Agricultural statement received the 13th of July, amended by email and plans received on the 23rd of April and amplified by information received on the 1st of December. Philippa, do you wish to present, please?
Yeah, I'll just share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that. Yes, thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This application is seeking permission retrospectively for the widening of an existing agricultural access, the replacement of hard standing and the provision of access gates. Officers are aware of concerns raised regarding activities that may have taken place on site and would advise members to focus on the matter in hand, which relates to the permission sought for an access, hard standing and access gates. I would like to draw members' attention to the update sheet, which provides clarification that a box van would mean a vehicle which has a maximum tonnage of 3.5 tonnes. Condition 4 has been updated accordingly. Moving on to the location plan. The application site is located to the south of Killinghurst Lane and comprises part of Furnace Place Estate Farm. The estate features an assortment of buildings and areas of hard standing, as well as large areas of agricultural fields. The site is currently accessed via a narrow access from Killinghurst Lane that runs alongside a stone driveway in front of Corner Cottage and numbers 3 and 4 new cottages. I'm just indicating that now. There is hedge screening along Killinghurst Lane to the north of the site and a number of large oak trees. There are residential properties directed to the west of the site. To the north, east and south of the site there is farmland. This aerial view, taken in 2013, shows the existing farm buildings, existing access and trees which line Killinghurst Lane. The application proposes the widening of an existing access, the replacement of existing hard standing and the provision of access gates onto Killinghurst Lane. With regard to the gates themselves would be approximately 6.16 metres in width and are typical metal agricultural gates with wooden post and rail fencing to the sides. The height of the gates would be approximately 1.36 metres from the ground to the top of the gates, and they are set back from the highway by 6.5 metres. Moving on to the photos. Photo A is taken from the north looking south towards the access. Photograph B is taken from the northeast looking southwest towards the existing site entrance and the junction with the B2131. Photograph C is taken from the northwest looking southeast down Killinghurst Lane. Photograph D is taken from within the site looking south with the access gate behind me in the photograph. Photo E is taken from within the site looking north, as is photograph F. So the main matters of consideration for this application. Number 1, is the proposal reasonably necessary for agriculture? Officers appointed an independent agricultural consultant to carry out an assessment on whether the widening of an existing agricultural access track and associated hard standing would be reasonably necessary for the purposes of agriculture and the continuation of an agricultural use of the farmland. Reading agricultural consultants concluded that it is evident that the land is in arable and grass production and therefore in agricultural use. The size of the estate would indicate that these activities would continue. Reading agricultural consultants also note that they are satisfied that the Dutch barn and pole barn are agricultural buildings, and although there was little agricultural use at the time of the inspection, the buildings would be useful for storage of machinery, hay and fertiliser. Officers are satisfied that the lawful use of the site is agricultural. No planning permission has been granted for the change of use of the land or buildings. Therefore, officers are satisfied that the application site forms part of an existing agricultural unit. The proposed development is considered to be reasonably necessary for the purposes of agriculture. Moving on to the impact on the greenbelt. In terms of the widening of the access, paragraph 150 of the MPPF sets out that certain forms of development are not inappropriate development in the greenbelt, provided they preserve the openness and do not conflict with the purposes of including land within it. One of the listed forms of development is engineering operations. The widening of an existing access track would constitute an engineering operation in association with an established agricultural holding. Officers are satisfied that this would preserve the openness of the land and the purposes of including that land within the greenbelt. On this basis, the widening of the access is considered appropriate greenbelt development. Similarly, the replacement of hard standing would constitute an engineering operation. Therefore, officers consider this to be an appropriate greenbelt development. With regard to the access gates, paragraph 149 of the MPPF sets out the construction of new buildings should be regarded as inappropriate development in the greenbelt with a number of exceptions. One of these exceptions is buildings for agriculture and forestry. Gates are considered to be buildings for the purposes of this assessment. The gates would serve an established agricultural holding, and it has been demonstrated previously, as I discussed, that the proposal would be reasonably necessary for agriculture. Therefore, the proposed gates would constitute a building for agriculture, which would be appropriate greenbelt development. With regard to landscape design and impact on visual amenity, officers acknowledge that the proposal would alter the existing access by widening it, increasing the area of hard standing and result in the removal of hedgerow. Notwithstanding this, the proposal is reasonably necessary for an established agricultural unit. Agricultural development is characteristic of the rural landscape and is considered to not be out of keeping with the appearance of the character and the area. The proposed gates, whilst larger than the existing access, flanked by post and rail fencing, would be typical for a rural area and would maintain an element of openness. With regard to the highway considerations, officers note the concerns raised by neighbouring occupiers regarding highway safety. The County Highway Authority has been consulted on the proposed development and sought additional information and clarification during the course of the application's assessment. Following the submission of a gated access plan, the County Highway Authority have stated that it's satisfied that a 6.5 metre setback from the edge of the carriageway is acceptable. In addition, with the submission of a tracking plan, it's been demonstrated that a box van can enter and leave the site without overrunning the unmade area north of the access. You will note from the update sheet that a box van has been clarified to mean a vehicle with a maximum tonnage of 3.5 tonnes. There is sufficient space within the site for such vehicles to park and turn in order for them to enter and leave the site in forward gear. A speed survey has been undertaken to ascertain that 85th percentile speed on this stretch of road and visibility at the proposed access point is considered sufficient. Subject to compliance with a number of conditions, including the amended condition 4, the County Highway Authority considers that the proposal will not have a material impact on highway safety. With regards to trees and hedgerows, officers note the concerns raised regarding the loss of trees and hedgerow. The Council's Landscape and Tree Officer has been consulted on the proposed development and considers there to be no conflict with trees along the site boundary onto Killinghurst Lane. It is evident from aerial imagery that hedgerow has been removed to facilitate the development. The tree officer notes the removal of the hedgerow could constitute a breach of hedgerow regulations. Whilst this is regrettable, it is not a matter that can be taken into account in the assessment of the proposal. And furthermore, a condition is recommended requiring the submission and approval of a detailed landscaping scheme, which includes details of replacement hedging alongside the widened access and hard standing. On the basis of the above, officers are recommending approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have a number of public speakers on this item. The first is Heather Liscombe, who wishes to object to this proposal. You have 4 minutes, Heather, if you're there.
Hello, thank you. Good evening. I'm representing the views of residents objecting to this application. We welcome the conditions included in the case officer's report. However, for the reasons outlined below, we are requesting that the gate width be reduced to 15 feet, which accommodates wide agricultural vehicles, and that the conditions are strengthened to specify a maximum box van size of 3.5 tonnes, to limit the use of the entrance to support agricultural activities only, no mixed use or industrial use, to prohibit overnight use of the entrance, and to limit noise levels from operations. The reasons are: 1, planning history, a material consideration. Councillors will know that the 2020 application by MP for a change of use from agricultural to mixed use was refused as it did not meet the approval criteria, nor was it acceptable in respect of highways, transport and noise impacts. We contest that the current application for a wider gateway will allow the mixed use already rejected. 2, industrial operations and noise. The case officer for PRA 2020-19 reported that at the time of the application, the entrance being considered today was being enlarged to serve the proposed mixed use development and was in shared use with the distillery and bottling operations decreed unlawful by Waverley Borough Council and subject to enforcement action. The entrance was not being enlarged to support agricultural activities. The non-permitted operations caused industrial noise and waste and involved substantial HGV traffic, needing a large turning circle off Killinghurst Lane, damaging the road edges and disrupting traffic. 3, applicants' plans are not solely for agricultural use. The Reading Agricultural Report states there was little agricultural use at the time of the inspection and acknowledges that it has not been determined that the activities in the modern barn, which benefit from the entrance, represent agricultural activity. Commercial distillery equipment remains on site, and in the statement by Mr. Patterson to Reading Agricultural Consultant, it is clear that the applicant expects to restart commercial operations which are not covered by this application. It stated that grain will be brought through the gates to be used in operations that your officers previously concluded were unlawful. 4, vehicle access. Waverley Borough Council planning state the proposed vehicle access to Killinghurst Lane shall not be utilised by any vehicle larger than a box van. Surrey County Council highways have further put a maximum box van size of 3.5 tonnes. Officers state that larger vehicles should access and egress the site solely via Petworth Road. This negates the need for large vehicles to turn left into the site from Killinghurst Lane. Forestry. Forestry operations are proposed using the widened entrance. However, a more suitable site located west of Killinghurst Lane has been used for many years as the main timber storage area. Conclusion. Residents question the need for a 20-foot wide entrance if it is only to be used for agricultural purposes. The normal legal maximum road width for unaccompanied agricultural vehicles is only 11.5 feet. If council has approved this application, it could enable a mixed-use restart with a repeat of previous noise problems, road safety issues, and damage from an industrial-scale distillery and bottling operation in this AONB. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. The next forward speaker is Sarah Morley, who wishes to speak in support of the application. Sarah.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, councillors. My name is Sarah Morley, and I'm the General Manager for MP Management, a company set up to help manage and maintain Furnace Place Estate through supporting and assisting Margaret Barlow, the estate owner. Following the death of Margaret's husband, Mr. John Barlow, in November 2017, the estate has endeavoured to progress as a modern farming agricultural enterprise and requires forward thinking and a supportive team. As recently as 1970, there were 30 employees engaged in full-time work on the estate, but times have changed through necessity. Today, the estate relies on independent specialist contractors and one part-time, semi-retired employee. To survive, it must now keep up with modern demand for whatever services or produce it can provide from the assets it has available. With the use of modern agricultural process, we intend to be as efficient as possible whilst managing this farming landscape. Furnace Place Estate was established in 1902 as a family-owned mixed arable, livestock, pasture and woodland estate extending to some 1,400 acres. The estate has experienced many changes since then, but the yard and estate office on Killinghurst Lane has always been the heart of the estate and our farming business. Having housed cattle, crops, logs, grains, been home to the market garden and the main hub for all our farm machinery, it has been an essential working yard. Our arable contractor uses modern, state-of-the-art machinery on our land in order to farm as efficiently as possible. The existing access and small gate in front of two of the old farmhand cottages, now estate rental properties with families, is unsuitable for such large machinery and a safer access is required. In order to provide a suitable access, the original access gate to the eastern end of the yard, which is the subject of this application, has been widened. This was used for farming practices, as well as the main public access to our market garden and soft fruit enterprise. It also allowed access to the agricultural mechanics workshop in the yard. This wider access, as highlighted by Surrey Highways, provides large agricultural machinery with safer, visible sight lines. It also sits directly opposite a large gravel lay-by and access to land within the holding to the north. It is accepted that some commercial uses of the site occurred for a short period of time. This included distilling gin and creation of hand sanitizer, a large quantum of which was supplied to the local community during the early stages of the pandemic. This business has now moved out of the borough, as has the associated workforce. Historic and current uses of the land on Furnace Place Estate and Killinghurst Lane Yard have been operating entirely legally under the definitions for agriculture of the Constitution of the European Union, with the exception of the temporary commercial use of a small part of the wider estate as referred to. Our current woodland management plan, forestry harvesting and haylage business have been severely hampered without the use of the widened access. In conclusion, the widening of this existing entrance allows the estate to work in line with modern agricultural practices. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Right, the third public speaker is Councillor Roger Underwood from Chiddingfold, ward member, but I believe it's a statement you're going to read out. Is that right, Kimberly?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Underwood is actually on the Zoom call. However, due to personal circumstances, he's unable to actually speak to us. So he's asked me to read it out for him. It is clear from the timeline that the development did not occur with agricultural purposes in mind. The works took place at a time that the site was being used unauthorised to distillery activity, with multiple HGV movements over the site. Then followed an application for prior approval for change of use to include mixed business, storage and distribution and hotel use, which was refused under application PRA 2020-0019. The development supports current or non-agricultural use, a point made in the Reading Agricultural Consultants Report at paragraph 22, where it states, it is also clear that the distillery company benefits from using the new gateway and access track. When the application was made, it was stated the change was to support existing agricultural use. The applicant's highways technical note by motion, dated 16th of November 2020, states at paragraph 3.5, the operation of the agricultural use of which the access serves will not be altered as a result of the upgraded access. As such, there will be no changes to the existing vehicular trips to and from the site. However, in the course of the most recent report by Reading Agricultural Consultants, a new emphasis has been put on forestry operations. Forestry activity at the site was not part of the original application papers, nor did it feature in the agricultural statement from July 2021. While the estate undertakes some forestry operations, these are not on site and have long operated without need of storing timber at the site, and there is no explanation as to why this would not continue to be the case. The parish council is concerned that there is now the suggestion of large forestry vehicles using the access and site. This is not the present case and would contradict the earlier application papers, including the motion report already referenced. The width of the gates and new hard standing track are excessive and above requirements. According to the November 2020 motion report, Killinghurst Lane is approximately 4 metres wide, paragraph 2.4, but the gates and track are 2 metres plus wider than this. The report states the access road has been constructed at 6.2 metres in width, enabling 2 HGVs to pass, paragraph 3.2. There is no justification for this if, as was stated on behalf of the applicant, there will be no changes to the existing vehicular trips to and from the site. The position of Surrey Highways does not appear to have been taken into account within the analysis in the Reading Agricultural Report. The Reading report references large agricultural and forestry vehicles using the new entrance, but Highways seek conditions that the proposed entrance be limited to vehicles no larger than a box van. The report also makes a point about the difficulty of large vehicles turning right from the existing main entrance, but large vehicles should not be turning right and travelling east on Killinghurst Lane, as the nature of the lane does not support such traffic, which is why Surrey Highways also seek a condition that large vehicles access via Petworth Road. The application was brought forward on the basis of no additional vehicle movements and no vehicles no larger than a box van. On this basis, it is not clear why this development is required, and certainly not why such a substantially enlarged entrance and track is required. Should permission be granted, the parish council seek that conditions be attached in line with Highways recommendations, including that vehicles larger than a box van are not permitted to utilise the entrance. In addition, there should be conditions to prevent any substantial increase in vehicle movements for reasons of neighbourhood amenity, and also to prevent site traffic travelling on Killinghurst Lane east of the new entrance gates. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Right, councillors, your turn. Anyone who wishes to speak on this item? Councillor James.
Thank you, Chairman. I just would like to point out that I didn't bring it to committee as the local member, but I do have concerns. Whilst I understand that I do agree that they need a new entrance, and that is absolutely, I mean, it is definitely, because it does go in front of the little houses at the moment. So I've got no problem with utilising the existing entrance that was much smaller. The fact that the gates are incredibly wide, and I would say totally unnecessary. I did ask the planning officer for the actual agreement on what size a box van is, and I'm very happy that she's come back. But it actually, in the condition, should other members agree to it, it should say that the vehicles would have to be no larger than an agricultural boxed van only. And the other vehicles have to use the Petworth Road, because it doesn't say any box van could go in and out, with, anything on it. It's an agricultural vehicle entrance only and not for any other. And that then agrees with the refusal of the change of business to class business uses. So whether or not, I'm not the technician, that a boxed van requires this enormous gate when the road isn't that width, if we could condition it to no more than the width of the road, because it's obviously common sense. If a road is only whatever it is 4 meters wide, then the gate should only be 4 meters wide. It is quite an open site, and it is actually at the sort of almost at the junction of Petworth Road. So the vehicles, I know some do go along Killinghurst Lane, the rest of it, but I think most of them do use the Petworth Road, and that's the way I go in and out. So I would agree that with the officer's recommendation that the access now should be agreed with a wider gate, but not the 20-foot wide gate, only the 4 meter wide, which is the road size, and that the boxed van vehicles using it are agricultural vehicles only, and all other vehicles have to use, and it does say it, use the Petworth Road. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was looking through the paperwork, and it was quite alarming. For once, we've had the Surrey Hills AONB advisor who's asking us to take care, because even they are saying the access seems excessively wide and does not seem reasonably necessary for the purposes of agriculture, being more suitable to commercial development. And I think from what I heard in the presentations, some of the hedges were cut back, and that may or may not have been in line with the hedgerows guidelines. And so it seems to me that I agree with my colleague that I think there does need to be a gate here, but it should be a narrower gate, because we don't want because this is an AONB, and it would be nice if perhaps the hedgerows could be reinstated if they've been cut down. Thank you.
Councillor Rubini.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, listening to that, and indeed to the for and against public speakers, as far as I can see on this, there is no application for a mixed use, and we would have control over that. I would ask the officer, in case we need to beef that up, if indeed that, I think it's on page 35 under the agricultural use, whether in fact we can enforce this properly. So if there was any mixed use, we can immediately stop it, because obviously that would be wrong. Whether we need to place a condition on it, or whether that is good enough to make sure it is stopped. As far as width of the gate is concerned, I'm not sure I agree or disagree. It's the width of a gate. Yes, we've now got a limit on the box van of 3.5 tons. I would rather see a slightly wider gate to stop an accident of some description. They've taken it back from the road, which I agree with, though I do agree the main entrance should be via Petworth Road. Like everybody else, we know that road very well. And if a large box van does go down it towards Chinningfold, then it's almost impossible for anybody else to come in the opposite direction. I don't think there's many passing places, so it would be very difficult to negotiate. So I too would, I would back a limit of turning from the Petworth Road. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps the officer could just answer about that condition, please.
Thank you, Councillor Rubini. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to add there that the lawful use of the site is agricultural. So it wouldn't be necessary or reasonable to specify specifically in the condition that only agricultural vehicles could use that access, because the lawful use of the site is agricultural. So I don't think putting that specifying that agricultural use would meet the tests of the planning conditions, because I don't think it's necessary to put it on there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coburn.
Well, inevitably, when Councillor James goes first, there's very little left to say. I mean, like her, I've got reservations about this, but not strong enough reservations to vote against the recommendation. But I think, you know, Councillor James spoke perfect sense, and anything we can do to strengthen the conditions. I mean, there is a history on this site, whether you like it or not. And, you know, if a word in a condition just gives it a little more force, then, you know, I can't see that it will be unreasonable to do that. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, I would put in, I know I'm notwithstanding what the officers just said, I mean, I accept that the use is agricultural. I can't see that in a condition we would be doing any harm if we were underlining that. You know, we're not gainsaying it. And I certainly think, you know, again, use of the word agriculture when you're looking at the box fan, because, you know, I mean, a box fan, okay, we've got a limit on size here, but it can be used for absolutely anything, you know, nothing to say what you put in it. So I feel, you know, that we do want this to succeed. We want it to have a successful agricultural use. If there's been a little bit of, and obviously this is retrospective, so, you know, there's always a feeling that perhaps people are not being 100% honest up front. I can't see it would do any harm to strengthen the conditions, to go with the recommendation, but strengthen it. And certainly I think the width of the gates, I'm with Councillor James on this. I just don't understand that. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Morner and then Councillor Dear.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a retrospective application, which has all the problems associated with that. I went down to the site this morning just to remind myself, and the gate is clearly far larger than is needed for agriculture, but that doesn't mean that it's therefore inappropriate. Some leeway is just a practical part of life. Although I sympathise strongly with Councillors James and Coburn about putting agricultural into the description of the vehicles, the truth is that farmyards get used by all sorts of vehicles. People visiting who may not have an agricultural vehicle, that doesn't mean it's the wrong use. What I would say, though, I think you could improve the condition by basically replacing the rather strange wording in the second sentence of the new condition 4, and simply say that larger vehicles shall only enter and leave the site via Petworth Road. And I would actually put that forward as an amendment, because it actually achieves what I think we're trying to do. So save for that, then I'm content with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Dear, then Councillor Martin and Councillor Keane. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman. Yes, I mean, I think the discussion is actually now coming back to the matter in hand. This is not an application. This is an application for a gate. It's not an application for all sorts of other things that may or may not happen. They will be decided on their own merits at this committee. There clearly have been some colourful suggestions made in the past, but they were refused. So I don't think we need to worry about them. I'm not a gate expert. I don't know whether this is a good gate or a bad gate or the right gate or the wrong gate, but it seems to me that it's there. It's been there, I guess, a little while. Nothing terrible's happened. The consent is drafted to apply a significant number of conditions, which I think cover the points that need to be covered. And I have no problem supporting the officer's recommendation. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
I feel the gates are a bit excessive. I know you can get a 7.5 tonne through a normal agricultural gate. This is a double agricultural gate. I've actually driven through a normal agricultural gate in a 7.5 tonner. So I think I go by Councillor Monomers and Keynes that anything over to 3.5 tonnes should be using the Petworth Road. Thank you.
Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I would support Councillor Mulliner's proposal. I think these gates are too wide. There obviously is neighbour concern and certainly Chiddingfold Parish Council are concerned. So yes, I think a stronger condition on would be a good idea. Thank you.
And Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's always worth looking at what the Parish Council has to say. And I think that they are very concerned with the large lorries trundling through and having an effect on noise and on which is an area of A and B. So I support just about everybody else. I think that the gates should be reduced in size, that the box fan size should be 3.5 tons and the gates no wider than 15 foot, I think Helen Liscombe said. I think that was the amount. But yeah, so that's, I agree with them. And I do think it's worth listening to a parish council, since they are the ones who live in that area. Thanks.
Right, we have an amendment put forward by Councillor Mulliner. Philippa, can we incorporate that somewhere in these here?
Thank you, Chair. So just so I understand, we're talking about the revised condition 4 and then adding a specific line to that that says that any vehicles larger than the 3.5 ton box van shall only access the site via the access from Petworth Road. Is that, am I correct in my understanding?
Chairman, may I just clarify?
Yeah,
I
sure.
have no problems with the condition, and I do think I know what its meaning is. I just felt that the use of a negative in the first sentence and then the use of the words such vehicles was needlessly obscure, if you wish, and I was just suggesting that the second sentence, which currently reads such vehicles associated with the site, etc., that should be replaced by a rather pithier one which just said larger vehicles shall only enter and leave the site via Petworth Road, B2131, to make it absolutely clear that.
So may I suggest that we change that to vehicles larger than 3.5 tons, just to be specific, associated with the use of the site shall only access and egress the site via the Petworth Road B2131. Is that correct?
If you're, do you, yes, I mean, I think that's fine. I mean, are there non-box vans smaller than 3.5 metres which would give anyone concern?
Do you want to add something, Councillor Deere?
Yeah, I just wonder if I could ask a quick technical question. I mean, I know the site access on Killinghurst Lane. I don't know the site access on Petworth Road. Are we suggesting that a new access egress is created on Petworth Road,
Chairman, can
which
I
is
help?
a dangerous thing, or is it an existing access egress that we can categorise as for bigger vehicles?
Chairman, can I help here?
Yes, sure.
There is an existing access. It's sort of almost on the apex of the corner. I'm not sure it's technically on Petworth Road, in fact, but I know what is being referred to. If you drive straight past the Lythe Hill and Courtium Sports and carried straight on, you'd go straight down this particular track. And if you look on the plan which the officer put up, you can actually see it. It points directly towards Hazelmere.
I beg your pardon. Is it lined blue on the plan?
I can share my screen again if that's helpful. It's the access here, so it's not, so the Petworth Road is here, so it's the one that's very much closer to Petworth Road, but not directly onto it.
Yeah, so it is lime blue and it's not on Petworth Road, but I know what you mean. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor James, you want some clarification?
Well, I'm glad that the officers come back with that, because there isn't an access onto the Petworth Road. It's still on Killinghurst Lane, and that's the access that people go in and out now. And that's why, as they're going in and out now, they want the larger vehicles to use that. The whole idea of really having these extra large gates on the application site is to stop the larger ones going up and down that other bit, and then waving in front of the houses and accessing the site that way. And that's why I agree that they've got to have some gates. I still think they're too wide. There's absolutely no reason for them. And the fact that I agree. I understand that the officer says there's no point in putting the word agricultural on it, but as the application and the lady, I can't think who she was, who spoke, Helen, who spoke in favour, no, I can't think it was, who spoke in favour of the site, referred the whole time, every word was agricultural, agricultural and agricultural. Therefore, I feel it's my responsibility to add the word in the condition, agriculture. I can understand the officer says it's not necessary because the land is only for agricultural use, but we all often have conditions that specify something specific. So I'm happy with the condition, provided that the vehicles, the agricultural vehicles, which are no larger than a boxed van, and then it says all the others have to use a Petworth Road, but they don't. They still use the first bit of Killinghurst Lane. So actually, it's almost irrelevant in my view, because once they've got the big gates, they're all going to access that bit, whether it's from the vehicles that use the original access or the new one. And that's why I will be happy with the officer's recommending, but providing I can have the word agricultural boxed van. Thank you, Chairman.
Right, we're going to get some advice, but Councillor Corbyn, you want to add something before we get some advice?
Well, I just really want to ask if we can just see the revised condition, because, you know, that it's not the same as the one in our report. And sometimes I'm not sure that we're all looking at the same condition. So could we ask the officers to put up the revised condition for, so that we do at least know what we're looking at? Thank you
just
very
bear
much.
with me. I'm going to try and put it at the very end of my presentation and then share it. Just bear with me.
Do you want, Barry Devlin's on the telephone, do you want to ask him for some advice?
Thank you, Chair. Barry, if you could clarify the position in terms of the necessity of putting the word agriculture within the condition. I think Philip and officers have expressed the view that it wouldn't necessarily meet those tests because the use is agriculture. I think it might be worth hearing from Barry Devlin on that point.
Barry, are you there? He's muted, I think.
Can you hear me now, Mr. Chairman?
Can you hear you now, Barry?
Yeah. Yes, I adhere entirely to the advice already given that the use of the site is clearly agricultural, and that it doesn't really adhere to the requirements for valid planning conditions in terms of enforceability to attach the label agricultural to box vans. Mr. Chairman, I feel that is unnecessary. I think the overall use of the site gives your planning officers in enforcement control enough power to regulate non-agricultural traffic of a commercial nature into and out of the site, Mr. Chairman. If that helps.
Thank you very much. Philip, have you got something to show us?
Yep. Sorry, bear with me. So I'll read it in case it's not clear. The proposed vehicular access to Killinghurst Lane, hereby approved, shall not be utilised at any time by any vehicle larger than a box van with a maximum tonnage of 3.5 tonnes. Vehicles larger than 3.5 tonnes shall only access and egress the site via Petworth Road B2131.
Chairman, could I possibly make another comment, having had it drawn to our attention that actually even the main or the existing entrance actually goes into Killingshurst Road. Could I suggest to avoid any problems in the future that after the word via, it should be the entrance nearer Petworth Road?
I'm sure we can accommodate that. Yes, Philippa?
Thank you.
Done.
Yep.
Right. Everybody happy with that? I mean, let's start. I think we'll vote on recommendation then. Please raise their hands. sound like Councillor Keane, but we've had some explanation from the office, from the legal advisor. Kimberly, the vote.
The vote, Chairman, is 10 in favour of the officer's recommendation, 1 against and no abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, therefore, the recommendation as amended is approved. Granted. Right, okay, let's move on. Final item of the night. Final item for the year, I suppose. WA 2021-793, land at 34 Kings Road, Hazelmere. The erection of a detached dwelling, new vehicle access and extensions and alterations to the existing dwelling. Carl, who's in to present? Carl, good evening.
Good evening, Chairman. Thank you. Good evening, members. I'll just share my screen. So there is one verbal update to make you aware of since the publishing of the agenda. Conditions 2, which is the materials condition, has been amended to change the trigger from prior to commencement of development to prior to commencement of works above ground level. So this application is for the erection of a detached dwelling, new access and extensions to the host dwelling at 34 Kings Road. The site comprises of an existing detached dwelling within the developed area of Hazelmere. As you can see from the plan, the wider area is residential in character with a mix of types and styles of dwellings. The aerial view shows the existing dwelling on the red pin. To the west is a block of flats of Doyle Court, and to the east is 32 Kings Road. The land levels decline fairly steeply from the south to the north, which will be apparent in the upcoming photos. So photo A shows the host dwelling, and to the left of which is the vacant space where the proposed dwelling is to be sited. And to the very left of the photo, you can see the outer wall of Doyle Court. Photo B faces east and looks down Kings Road. The development on the opposite side of the road mostly comprises of terraced housing. Photo C looks west towards the eastern wall of Doyle Court. And photo D is taken from the parking area of Doyle Court, looking towards the application site, where you can sort of notice the land levels declining and the rear of the existing dwellings that become 3-storey in stature. You'll also note the site is fairly overgrown at present. So the site plan shows the location of the proposed dwelling and extensions to the host dwelling. All of the proposed development, all of the proposed built form lies entirely within flood zone 1 and outside of flood zone 2, denoted by the blue line on the proposed site plan. This slide shows the proposed elevations of the host dwelling, where you can see there's a 1-storey front extension and a 3-storey rear extension. And these are the proposed floor plans of the host dwelling. It will be a 3-bedroom dwelling with 2 parking spaces proposed. This slide shows the proposed elevations of the new dwelling. The dwelling has a barn hip roof, a gable feature, and extends 3 stories to the rear as well. Proposed floor plans show it is 4 bedrooms and has 2 parking spaces. So it's a material consideration that in May of this year, a scheme for a block of 6 flats following the demolition of the existing dwelling was approved under WA 2020-0881, the site plan of which is now on your screen. It is worth noting that the dwelling proposed under this application is sited 0.4 metres further away from Doyle Court than the approved flat, whilst also being approximately 0.2 metres shorter in ridge height. And this is the approved front elevation of WA 2020-0881. And this is the approved rear elevation of WA 2020-0881. So the main consideration on this application are the design and impact on visual amenity, impact on residential amenity, and parking provision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have a public speaker on this item, and that's James Hodgkins, who wishes to speak in support of the application. James.
Thank you, Chair. Members, thank you for your time this evening and providing me with an opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicant. My name is James from Simply Planning, and I'm here to ask you to support the application in accordance with your officer's recommendation. As you've heard, the application seeking permission for the erection of a 4-bed detached family dwelling alongside a 3-storey rear extension and single-storey front extension to the host property. From the outset, we would highlight that the proposals have been carefully considered to provide a high-quality residential development whilst responding to the character of the surrounding environment and respecting the amenity of neighbouring residents. The proposed dwelling will sit in a logical infill plot between 34 Kings Road and Doyle Court. It is set back from the pavement edge and fronts the adjoining highway. The siting of the dwelling is consistent with the established building line and reinforces the prevailing linear character of the street. The proposed dwelling comprises 2.5 stories when viewed from the street scene, and with the dormer window installed in the southern roof slope. Dormer windows are a common feature within the Kings Road, and the design is wholly in accordance with the neighbouring property. To the rear, the property takes advantage of the topography of the land and optimises the potential of the site through the provision of a lower ground floor, standing at 3 stories. As your officers have confirmed, the scale, bulk, height and mass of the proposed dwelling is appropriate for the plot and the design is acceptable in this location. Similarly, the extensions to 34 Kings Road will be of a high quality architectural finish and are subservient to the host dwelling. The rear gable addition adds balance and symmetry to the rear elevation, and the proposed front extension will deliver an integral garage providing a car stacker. The proposed development will not be overbearing and will not give rise to any overlooking, loss of light or loss of outlook. This is detailed in section 14 of the Officers Committee report. At this point, we'd also highlight that no objections have been raised by any technical consultees, including the Town Council, the Environment Agency, Natural England, Surrey Wildlife Trust, Thames Water, or Surrey County Highways. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, it should be noted that the application site is within the developed area of Hazelmere and is therefore a highly sustainable location, which benefits from exceptional access to a range of services, facilities, and public transport infrastructure. Indeed, as I'm sure you're aware, the railway station is only approximately 350 metres to the east. As such, in accordance with the borough's spatial strategy, the proposals will direct new residential development to an identified main settlement and will go some way in prioritising sustainable modes of travel and reducing the reliance on private motor vehicles. Furthermore, the need to deliver new residential accommodation is, of course, a national and local priority and should not be underestimated. Overall, the proposals optimise the potential of this underutilised and highly sustainable site to deliver a new dwelling and improve residential accommodation. They do not cause harm to the amenity of neighbouring residents, are of an appropriate scale and design, and do not give rise to any ecological, drainage or highways issues. In this regard, we would respectfully ask you to support the application in line with your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, Councillor, it's your turn to speak. Councillor Dixon off the mark. Everyone.
Good evening, Councillor. Just wanted to check, am I reading this correctly? That in 2020, we gave permission for 6 flats to be built, and that was given full permission. And now they're coming back, and we've counted that it's going to be 5 additional dwellings in local plan part 2. And now they're coming back and they want planning permission to build 2 houses. And we were counting on that site to have 5 or 6 houses on it. Is that actually the case?
Like Chris.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, there is a consent, and it's still in place for the 6 units. This is a increase of 1 unit from what I understand. Carla, correct me if there's if I'm wrong in any way, but this is just for the 1 unit. We've got to look at each application on its merits, and it may be that if consent was granted, we don't. It's for the applicant then to decide which scheme they would build out. But our position is it doesn't undermine the kind of the wider plan making process to any significant degree. We're looking at a site that a site which would be 6 or 1, not a larger number. Thank you, Chair.
May I come back, Chairman?
Yeah.
May I come back, Chairman?
Yes, go on.
Just to say that if I know I've been on this committee since 2019, and I know what we're like in general, we're very meticulous. So if we agreed in 2020 to put 6 flats on this site, it must have been a good plan. And therefore, I cannot agree because of the problems we've got with LPP2, for it to be reduced to 2 flats. And I really don't think anyone else here should agree either. Thank you.
You want to answer that, Chris, or Arlen?
I think it's also probably worth mentioning at this stage that local plan part 2 isn't a made plan. So I think you'd really struggle to attach a lot of weight to that position, and certainly to refuse on those grounds, I think would be very, very difficult, because it's not a made plan at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Rini, then Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Chair. Kings Road, I think most of us that live in Hazelham and probably nearby know Kings Road. Over the years, it's changed. It's had a lot of conversions into flats and what have you. One of its biggest problems is and always has been parking. The county council have put yellow lines down. They've got tickets for people to park with in the neighbourhood schemes. It is a difficult area. If we are looking at flats, then they will require more parking and more vehicles than 2 houses. So personally, I think if nothing else, that these 2 dwellings would reduce the necessity for extra vehicles either on the road or nearby, rather than the permission that we gave for the flats in that particular site. It is a difficult site, as we know. It goes down steeply, there's a stream, and of course there's the railway at the bottom. I think these look quite nice to fit in there. I think they will fit, and personally I would be in favour of granting permission to let those 2 houses go. Thank you.
Councillor Coburn.
I couldn't agree more with the previous speaker. I think this is a much better use of the land. Yes, it doesn't deliver the same number of dwellings, but if it's a better use of the land and fits in better, I think it will create fewer problems having 2 houses from 5, 6 flats, I should say. And we're not living in paradise. We have problems wherever we put development, and I think this will end up being much more attractive than anything we gave permission for before. And even if we had a made local plan part 2, we still can't hold anybody to the number of houses that are in there. It's totally unreasonable. Planning, as we know, is always a snapshot in time, and things change for different reasons. And no, I support the officer's recommendation here. I noticed there's an awful lot of mention of bins, and I did notice in the photograph a sort of plethora of bins. I know you can never ask one application to put right the sins of an area, but by golly, let's hope these 2 do have some form of bin store, because it really is obviously a big issue along Kings Road. And not an attractive site, because the road itself is not unattractive, but bins just are never a thing of beauty. So I thoroughly support the officers in this one. Thank you.
Councillor Mulliner.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't say much, because I agree that given that we've given permission for this very site with a somewhat similar building, it would be unreasonable to refuse it for this. It's up to the applicant what they want to build out. And I can see no good reason for differing from the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Deere.
So I've got nothing to add to that, so thanks very much.
And Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I support this application. For those of us that know Kings Road has suffered with so much development along there, and Councillor Coburn is quite right. The bins are an eyesore because nobody's got anywhere to put them, and so they sit out on the road, and there they are. But I think it's far better to have this development than 6 flats. The traffic along Kings Road is horrendous. The parking is horrendous. So anything that alleviates that by this development is much more acceptable. Thank you.
Any other councillor wish to speak? Right, we shall move to the recommendation then. The recommendation is that subject to conditions 1 to 10 and in points 1 to 8, permission be granted. Those in favour, please raise their hand. The result, Kimberly.
Thank you, Chairman. So we have 10 in favour, none against, and 1 abstention. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, that brings us to an end. I think there's no non-public speaking items or exempt items. So I shall close the meeting by wishing you all a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and let's hope it's a better New Year for us all. Thank you very much. And the next meeting is the 26th of January, all being well.